Let us begin with a truth that most people are too afraid to admit. Fear and anxiety are not the enemies outside of us. They are the shadows within us. But here's the secret: shadows vanish when you turn on the light. And that light, my friends, is found within your own mind, within your decisions, your beliefs, your actions, and your absolute refusal to bow down to emotions that were never meant to control you. Fear thrives in confusion. It breeds in the absence of direction. When you don't know where you're going, every path looks dangerous. Every noise becomes a threat. Every delay feels like failure. But the moment you decide, truly decide, what you want, fear loses its grip. When the mind is obsessed with purpose, it has no time for panic. When you wake up with a mission that burns in your heart, the petty voices of doubt begin to sound like background noise you no longer even notice. Anxiety is nothing more than imagination misused. You are imagining what could go wrong instead of what could go right. You are rehearsing failure instead of visualizing success. And yet, that same imagination, when guided by purpose, becomes your most powerful weapon. It can build visions so bold, so clear, so real in your heart, that fear cannot survive in its presence. The person who conquers fear is not a person who never feels it. It is the person who moves forward in spite of it. Every great achievement in the history of mankind was born not in the absence of fear, but in the decision to act anyway. You do not become fearless by avoiding hard things. You become fearless by walking through fear and realizing it had no power over you to begin with. There is no anxiety in action. Let me repeat that: there is no anxiety in action. Anxiety only grows when you sit idle, when you overthink, when you imagine the worst and do nothing to challenge it. But the moment you move, the moment you take a step forward, however small, you send a message to your mind that you are in control. And that message changes everything. The secret to living without fear is not found in books alone, or in therapy rooms, or in quiet prayers hoping to be rescued. The secret is this: take responsibility for your mind. Train it. Direct it. Guard it the same way you would guard your home from a thief. You must guard your thoughts from fear, because fear is the thief. It steals your peace. It robs your dreams, and it will keep robbing you until you decide that enough is enough. You cannot allow your emotions to govern your life. You cannot let a temporary feeling decide your permanent future. Master yourself. Master your inner dialogue. You can speak fear into weakness. You can speak courage into reality. Your voice, your inner voice, is more powerful than the voice of doubt. But you must be willing to speak up. Speak life over yourself. Speak strength into your day. Speak certainty into your decisions. When the mind hears you take charge, it obeys. People live their whole lives paralyzed, not because of danger, but because of the illusion of danger. And that illusion is often magnified by what they consume, the news they watch, the gossip they absorb, the failures they dwell on. But what if, instead of feeding fear, you fed your faith? What if you woke up each morning and chose thoughts that strengthened you instead of weakening you? What if you trained your mind like a warrior trains his body, with repetition, with discipline, with intentionality? You were not created to live in a state of fear. You were not designed to walk through life shackled by anxiety. You were created with a mind capable of building, of dreaming, of creating a life so full of purpose that fear has no place to stay. And yet you must choose. Every day, you must choose what dominates your inner world. You cannot think of fear and faith at the same time. One must replace the other. If you're thinking of all that could go wrong, you are pushing out all that could go right. If you're dwelling on defeat, you are rejecting the possibility of victory. And so the most powerful truth of all is this: you are the gatekeeper of your mind. No one else has the authority to think your thoughts. No one else decides what takes root in your heart. No one else determines the direction of your mental focus. That power is yours. Use it. Start your day with purpose, not panic. Start your thoughts with intention, not assumption. Surround yourself with people, ideas, voices, and visions that lift you. Replace every doubt with determination. Replace every anxious whisper with a powerful declaration: I am not afraid. I am not anxious. I am focused. I am bold. I am here for a purpose, and I will not back down from it. Fear may knock at the door, but you don't have to answer. Anxiety may rise, but you don't have to rise with it. You have a mission. You have a reason to wake up and move forward. And when that reason is strong enough, there will be no room left for fear to breathe. Most people never defeat fear and anxiety because they are too unclear about what they actually want. They drift from one day to the next, hoping things will somehow fall into place. But deep down, they are filled with uncertainty. And this uncertainty is what feeds fear. Doubt loves confusion. Anxiety survives in a mind that hasn't made up its mind. But when you become definite in your purpose, when you decide clearly where you are going and why, you slam the door shut on fear. Fear has no room to live in a heart that has made a firm decision. The truth is, your mind needs direction. Without it, it will wander. And when the mind wanders, it almost always wanders into worry, into worst-case scenarios, into stories of what if and what might go wrong. This wandering becomes a cycle, and that cycle traps people in fear for years. But when you decide with boldness what your purpose is, that wandering stops. The mind becomes focused. Your energy is directed. Your emotions become aligned with your goals, and your inner dialogue changes from hesitation to determination. People who achieve peace and freedom from anxiety are not those who wait for fear to disappear. They are those who replace fear with vision. When you know what you're here to do, you don't spend time questioning yourself. You act. You move. You execute. And every step you take with intention silences another voice of doubt. Purpose gives you power. It makes your decisions easier. It filters your focus. You stop entertaining distractions because they don't serve the mission. And when your life is led by a strong mission, you no longer fear failure. You fear wasting time. That shift destroys anxiety. The time you once spent overthinking is now spent creating, building, and moving forward. Definiteness of purpose is like an internal compass. It doesn't remove the storms of life, but it keeps you moving in the right direction through them. Even when fear tries to rise, it can't control you anymore because you know what you're committed to. You become unshakable, not because you feel brave every day, but because you are loyal to something greater than your feelings, your mission. And the best part, you don't have to wait for permission to become this person. The moment you decide what your purpose is, and you decide it with conviction, you begin to transform. You stop chasing external validation. You stop trying to please everyone. You live with clarity, and clarity breeds confidence. Confidence eliminates hesitation. And when hesitation is gone, fear has no more air to breathe. The secret isn't to be fearless. It's to be focused, and focus is born from purpose. A clear purpose is the beginning of inner strength. Once you find that, fear doesn't stand a chance. Every single emotion you feel begins with a thought. Your peace, your fear, your hope, your anxiety, all of it originates in the way you think. Your thoughts are not just passing ideas, they are the architects of your inner world. If you live in constant stress, it's not because life is too overwhelming. It's because your thoughts are building rooms filled with panic instead of calm. If your heart feels restless, it's because your mind is running without direction, creating chaos instead of stability. But here's the empowering truth: the mind can be trained, thoughts can be chosen. And when you take control of your thinking, you take control of your peace. Most people never realize how much control they truly have. They wake up and immediately start reacting to the news, to notifications, to problems, to fear-based scenarios playing on a loop in their minds. They think they are victims of their emotions, but in reality they are victims of untrained thought. The mind is a powerful tool, but if left unchecked, it becomes the very thing that tears you down. It will exaggerate threats. It will cling to regret. It will worry about what hasn't even happened yet. This is why so many people feel anxious without knowing why. Their thoughts are silently shaping their emotions, minute by minute, without awareness. But what happens when you shift your awareness? When you begin to observe your thoughts like a builder studies a blueprint, everything changes. You stop letting just any idea take up space in your mind. You become selective, intentional. You begin to choose thoughts that build peace rather than destroy it. You replace doubt with faith. You replace self-criticism with gratitude. You replace what-if-ifs with action steps. And slowly, your mind becomes a home you want to live in, not one you're constantly trying to escape from. Inner peace is not a gift that some people have and others don't. It is a skill, built, practiced, and maintained by guarding your thinking. And once you understand that your thoughts are creative tools, not just background noise, you start using them differently. You don't allow negative thoughts to go unchallenged. You don't tolerate toxic self-talk. You take your mental environment as seriously as your physical one, because you now know your peace depends on it. The person who understands the power of their thoughts becomes free. Not free from problems, but free from the control of panic. Free from emotional chaos. Free from the patterns that used to keep them stuck. They are no longer ruled by circumstance because they have built a mental foundation strong enough to handle storms. And it all begins with one simple truth: what you think, you feel. What you feel, you live. What you live becomes your life. Fear and faith are two forces that cannot coexist. They are opposites. They cancel each other out. When one enters, the other must leave. That's the nature of the human mind. It cannot hold on to two conflicting emotions at the same time. So the real question is, which one will you choose to build your life around? Fear keeps you frozen. It whispers every worst-case scenario, magnifies your doubts, and convinces you that you're not enough. But faith, it liberates, it strengthens. It breathes life into your purpose and gives you the courage to keep moving even when the path ahead is uncertain. Most people live by fear without even realizing it. They make decisions based on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. They hesitate, procrastinate, and limit themselves because fear paints the future in dark, unpredictable colors. But what they fail to see is that fear is only as powerful as the attention you give it. And that's where faith comes in. Faith is not wishful thinking or blind optimism. Faith is a decision to believe in something greater than fear. It is the choice to see possibility when everything seems uncertain. It is the inner strength that reminds you that setbacks are not the end, that obstacles are not permanent, and that your vision is more powerful than your doubt. When fear grips the mind, it shuts down creativity. It narrows your vision. It makes you believe you are alone, unworthy, or incapable. But when you operate with faith, you begin to see things differently. You start looking for solutions instead of focusing on problems. You tap into a part of yourself that is calm even in chaos. That calm doesn't come from outside. It comes from the belief that no matter how dark the moment feels, light is still possible. That belief is your anchor. It keeps you grounded when everything around you seems shaky. Faith doesn't require proof. It requires choice. It's waking up in the morning and deciding that today you will think thoughts that serve you. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I may not have all the answers, but I have the strength to figure it out. Faith rewires the mind to see struggle as training, not punishment. It transforms uncertainty into opportunity. Where fear sees risk, faith sees growth. Where fear sees a dead end, faith sees a lesson. Your life will reflect the dominant energy of your thoughts. If fear is your dominant story, you'll live a life full of hesitation, regret, and missed chances. But if faith becomes your foundation, you'll rise above the noise. You'll begin to trust the process, trust your instincts, and trust the power planted inside you. Fear says, what if you fail? Faith says, what if this is exactly what you were made for? And understand this clearly: faith is not something you only use in moments of crisis. It is a daily practice. You build it like a muscle. You affirm it when everything is going right, so that it's strong enough to support you when things go wrong. And with time, faith becomes a way of life, a mindset, a steady presence that walks with you, no matter how loud fear tries to be. When you live by faith, you don't need all the details to take the next step. You move forward knowing that clarity comes through motion, not waiting. You don't freeze when things feel uncertain. You act, you adjust, and you trust. That is the antidote to fear. Not eliminating problems, but elevating your thinking above them. Anxiety often feels like a storm within the mind, loud, chaotic, unpredictable. It builds silently, fed by overthinking. hesitation, and imagined worst-case scenarios. And yet, in nearly every case, the cure is not more thinking, it's action. Action breaks the loop. It interrupts the spiral. It pulls you out of the imaginary future and places you firmly in the present moment where real power lies. Because anxiety, at its root, is fear of the unknown. And what is unknown becomes known the moment you act. Most people wait for anxiety to disappear before they move. They wait to feel ready. They wait for perfect timing, but that timing never comes. Because readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision. Waiting only strengthens anxiety. It gives your mind more time to create false scenarios, to add layers of doubt, to rehearse failure. But the moment you take a single step toward your goal, no matter how small, you begin to shift the energy. The fear starts to fade, not because it magically disappears, but because it no longer has your full attention. Anxiety grows in silence, in stillness, in passivity. When you sit idle, you give fear the loudest voice in the room. But when you act, even in a small way, you take the microphone back. You say, "I'm not going to be paralyzed by this thought. I'm going to move anyway." And in that movement, clarity begins to form. Confidence starts to build. Action becomes proof to your nervous system that you are not powerless. And every time you choose action over avoidance, you send a message to your mind. I am capable. I am in control. I am not afraid to try. The beauty of action is that it doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. It just has to be real. It can be as simple as making a decision you've been avoiding, starting a task you've been overthinking, or speaking words you've been holding back. Action is momentum, and momentum destroys doubt. Once you begin, your brain starts working with you instead of against you. The mental fog lifts, the pressure lightens. You're no longer trapped in the cycle of, what if? You're too busy building. What's next? There is something deeply healing about doing the thing that scares you, not because the fear instantly vanishes, but because you prove to yourself that fear doesn't control you. And the more you do it, the less intimidating fear becomes. Over time, your identity changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is anxious and start recognizing yourself as someone who moves forward despite discomfort. That's how strength is built. Not in perfect conditions, but in imperfect actions taken consistently. It's important to understand that taking action doesn't always mean doing something huge. Sometimes it means taking a breath and choosing a new thought. Sometimes it means getting out of bed when you don't feel like it. Sometimes it means hitting send on that message, making that call, or setting a boundary you've been avoiding. These are all actions. And every time you choose one, you weaken anxiety's grip. You do not need to have all the answers to take the next step. You only need to be willing to move forward. Movement builds momentum, and momentum builds freedom. The goal is not to eliminate all fear before you begin. It's to begin and let fear adjust to your courage. The greatest battles we face are not with the world outside, but with the world within. Fear does not begin in the situation. It begins in the self. And so, the true path to overcoming fear is not by changing circumstances, but by mastering your inner world. Self-mastery is the key. When you learn to control your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses, and your habits, fear no longer has a place to take root. It may still knock on the door, but it won't be allowed in, because a person who is in command of themselves does not surrender to fear. They rise above it. Most people live their lives being pulled in every direction by their feelings. One moment they're motivated, the next they're discouraged. One challenge throws them off balance. One delay leads them to quit. They don't realize that fear is thriving in that emotional instability. Fear loves an undisciplined mind, because an undisciplined mind can be easily influenced. But when you train yourself to stay focused when it's hard, to keep your emotions in check, to delay gratification, and to think with clarity in moments of stress, you begin to develop power over the very forces that once controlled you. Self-mastery is not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It means you no longer allow temporary feelings to dictate long-term decisions. It means you pause before reacting, you reflect before responding, and you act in alignment with your purpose instead of your panic. The more you practice this discipline, the more confident you become. And with confidence comes courage. You are no longer living at the mercy of fear because you've trained your mind to stay grounded. You know how to navigate through emotional storms without losing your direction. Mastery over self requires commitment. It requires daily decisions to strengthen your mindset, to challenge your limiting beliefs, and to rise above excuses. It is about building resilience one habit at a time, waking up early even when you don't feel like it, speaking your truth even when your voice shakes, staying consistent with your goals even when motivation fades. These may seem like small acts, but they are actually acts of courage. They are you proving to yourself every day that you are capable of leading your life from a place of power, not fear. When you master yourself, fear becomes something you observe, not something you obey. You recognize it, but you don't bow to it. You feel it, but you move anyway. And that is where true transformation begins, not in eliminating all fear, but in no longer being ruled by it. Because when you are the master of your mind, your emotions, and your behavior, fear can no longer manipulate you. It loses its influence. This level of personal power is available to anyone who is willing to do the inner work. It doesn't come overnight, but with repetition, reflection, and relentless commitment, it becomes who you are. You become someone who can walk into the unknown with steady breath and clear eyes. Someone who can face adversity without crumbling. Someone who no longer waits for permission to live boldly. You don't have to chase fear away. You just have to rise so strongly in your self-leadership that fear no longer feels welcome. In mastering yourself, you don't just change how you feel. You change how you live. And when you live from that place, fear becomes nothing more than a passing thought in the presence of your unwavering will. You become immovable, not because life is easy, but because you have built yourself into someone who is stronger than fear. And that, more than anything, is the power of self-mastery. Your mind cannot hold two opposing thoughts at the same time. This is one of the most powerful truths about how your inner world works. If you're thinking about fear, you're not thinking about faith. If you're focusing on gratitude, you're not focusing on what you're lacking. This is the essence of the law of substitution. You have the power to choose what dominates your mind, and by doing so, you change the way you feel, the way you act, and ultimately, the way you live. The human mind is always active. It's never truly empty. So the question is never if you are thinking, but what you are thinking. And that one choice determines whether your thoughts lead you into fear, stress, and anxiety, or into confidence, peace, and purpose. The mistake most people make is thinking they have no control over what enters their mind. They let outside circumstances dictate their inner state. They hear a piece of bad news and dwell on it all day. They remember one failure and allow it to define their identity. But what they don't realize is that in every moment, they have the ability to interrupt those thoughts and replace them with new ones. You can't just eliminate a negative thought. You must replace it. That's the law. The moment you catch yourself spiraling in fear, worry, or anger, you must consciously substitute that thought with something stronger, something higher, something aligned with who you want to be. This takes awareness and discipline, but it can be done. In fact, it must be done if you want to live in emotional freedom. Think of your mind as a garden. If you don't plant seeds of positivity, growth, and purpose, weeds of fear and doubt will grow on their own. That's just how nature works. Your job is to actively choose what you allow to grow. When you begin to understand the law of substitution, you stop trying to suppress every negative emotion, and instead, you replace it with something more empowering. When your mind wants to dwell on what's going wrong, you choose to focus on what's going right. When it wants to repeat a story of failure, you substitute it with a vision of victory. When it wants to replay fear, you switch the channel to courage. This doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you choose how you relate to it. You don't have to deny your problems. You just don't let them dominate your thinking. You focus on solutions. You don't have to pretend everything is perfect. You just make sure your thoughts are moving you forward, not holding you back. This is a powerful shift, and it gives you control where most people feel powerless. It takes practice, especially at first. Your old thought patterns may try to sneak back in, but with repetition, your new thoughts become stronger. They become habits, they become your automatic responses. And soon, you'll find that your default state is no longer anxiety or fear, but clarity, calm, and courage. You get to choose your focus every day. You get to choose what thoughts take up space in your mind. And that choice creates your emotional state, your energy, your actions, and your life. So whenever fear tries to take hold, don't argue with it. Just replace it. Whenever anxiety knocks, don't let it in. Open the door to gratitude. When worry wants to steal your peace, give your mind a better job to do. Redirect it, reframe it, replace it. That is how you master the law of substitution. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of those thoughts. You are the one who chooses what stays and what goes. And when you begin to choose deliberately, when you take that responsibility seriously, you no longer live at the mercy of fear. You live by intention. You live by truth. And that truth will always be stronger than any fear you could ever imagine. In the end, the journey to living without fear and anxiety is not about denying the existence of challenges. It's about changing the way you respond to them. You are not powerless. You are not stuck. You are not broken. You are equipped with a mind capable of clarity, a heart capable of courage, and a will strong enough to rise above fear. Whether it's through defining your purpose, mastering your thoughts, choosing faith over doubt, or simply taking that one small step forward, the power has always been in your hands. Fear may visit, but it doesn't have to stay. Anxiety may knock, but it doesn't have to move in. Every day, with every thought, every decision, and every action, you are building either a life of fear or a life of freedom. Choose freedom. Choose courage. Choose to lead your mind, not follow your fear. Because the moment you take control of your inner world, your outer world begins to shift. And that truly is the beginning of living a life beyond fear, forever.